was sent in by Emma Connor a couple of days ago. And she says, I would love the topic of appearance to be discussed. Why does it seem that long, luscious hair seems to be preferred, in inverted commas? Why aren't small tattoos acceptable? Size/weight still seems to be an issue, with a sad emoji. Why isn't the delegates community/charity/volunteering work looked at more when crowning a new queen? Still seems there is a certain type, in inverted commas, of delegate always chosen. And then at the bottom, in all caps, we need to see more curvy beauty queens. Okay, so I will go through this comment by comment or statement by statement, and if you have any questions or any comments, chime in below. Well, first off, I would love the topic of appearance to be discussed. Obviously, that's a huge thing in beauty pageants. I do take issue when people tell me that pageantry has nothing to do with appearance. I think we know that it at the very least has some part to play in almost all systems, and in some systems it still has a large part to play. By the way, I don't necessarily think that's right or wrong. It's simply the way it is. I have no problems. As an overall rule, my rule is I don't mind if a pageant has an agenda. If the director has an agenda, whether that be they want a certain appearance, a certain hair color, whatever it is, as long as they're upfront and transparent about it. This is a huge thing that I will get to it in a later live, but I almost don't care what their agenda is as long as they're transparent about it. If they have an agenda that they don't want to disclose publicly, then I think that's a huge clue that that agenda is not appropriate. So for example, if they want skinny Caucasian blonde girls with a certain waist size and a certain bust size, they're probably not going to want to disclose that because that's quite discriminatory, which kind of means that agenda shouldn't exist in the first place. But, I mean, that's my general overall rule because I really make an effort to see arguments from both sides, and that's what I'd like you guys to do as well as my audience. But let's move on. Enough preaching. Why does it seem that long, luscious hair seems to be preferred? I don't know if I can necessarily agree with that. I would guess maybe in most cases long hair definitely is preferred to short hair, but I don't think that's anyone's fault. I think that's what the market wants. If the market wants long hair, then it's not really surprising that pageantry would tend to go that way. If the market switches to short hair, I would expect that pageantry then would seem to favor more the short hair. It's kind of like going with fashion, and if fashion dictates a certain way, then it's probably easiest to go with the fashion. Obviously, if you want to go counter fashion and start your own movement or make your own statement, then that's up to you as well. What I would say is if you go counter to the trend, I don't think you can then whinge about feeling the effects of that. But if you want to make a statement, then absolutely go make a statement. So if you don't want to follow the trend, don't follow the trend. But I wouldn't say that in all systems it's preferred. And to the next point, why aren't small tattoos acceptable? Categorically, I know that's not correct. I do know that there are systems where actually some of the contestants, and some of them are being sent overseas from Australia, they're actually quite heavily tattooed. In fact, that was one of the things that the director of the system, who's a friend of mine, Jasmine Follow, she was quite proud of, and rightly so, that, you know, some of her delegates, they have tattoos. I guess you'd call it almost full sleeve. Put it this way, it's big enough that I don't think you could hide it. It's basically a whole arm. So this is really something that I want to get across to you guys. Be very careful when you make statements like, why aren't small tattoos acceptable? Just look at that and go, what's the presupposition behind that question? The presupposition behind that question is, and again, like all respect to Emma, I'm not picking on you, but the presupposition is that small tattoos are not acceptable. Okay, in some systems, yes, they're not, but I know, for example, in certain systems, they very much are. So just be very careful, because when we make blanket statements, we encourage that us versus them mentality, and that's when we have these giant kind of arguments that really don't need to exist. Size/weight still seems to be an issue with a sad face. Yes, in some pageants. Rachel has said Miss Universe Vietnam has short hair. She looks awesome. Yes, so, I mean, if we look at how many of, let's say, international... Again, you need to set, like, certain rules. So we said how many international queens have long hair versus short hair. I wouldn't be surprised if more of them have long hair, but I don't think that that's a problem for me. And I think it's another step entirely to say it's like discriminatory or something like that. I do know size/weight still seems to be an issue in general in our society. But I do want to point out, again, just to encourage you guys to see both sides of the issue. My friend Emily Egan, who I interviewed, when she was younger, she was overweight. She was bullied for that. Then she felt so bad about it, she got an eating disorder and became skinny. Then she was body shamed on a train or bullied for that as well. And I've noticed that with some people at my office here, there's this seeming assumption that if you're skinny, you've got it easy, especially from people who aren't skinny. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case. We are all human beings first. Skinny people, skinny girls, have different issues to bigger girls, have different issues to curvy, etc., etc. It's very dangerous to assume that because someone is skinny, their life is easier. And be very careful, doubly careful, that when a skinny girl in inverted commas, wins, make sure you don't just jump to the assumption that she won simply because she's skinny. Because that would be as dangerous as saying, oh, someone's curvy. She won just because she's curvy. Unless you know what went on behind the scenes and you have the judging sheet in front of you, you can't make those assumptions. Would I love for size and weight to be less of an issue in our society? Sure. But it's kind of beyond my power to do that, and it's really up to the directors of their own individual systems. Why isn't the delegates community/charity/volunteering work looked at more when crowning a new queen? Still seems there is a certain type of delegate always chosen. All right, I'll just jump into the last bit for a sec. As far as there being a certain type of delegate always chosen, again, that's a bit too blanket of a statement, Emma. I can't speak to that. Unless you name a particular system and say, okay, they always seem to pick this type. But again, without knowing what's going on behind the scenes, we can't really say that. As far as delegates community/charity/volunteering work, why isn't that looked more at? That, again, it comes down to a system-to-system basis. I absolutely agree that we should be looking at more than, let's say, the physical aspect. But there are some systems that look very heavily at other aspects. So I don't want to just blanket go out and say, yeah, systems, then you all need to look, all directors, you all need to look at all this stuff because all of you are just concentrating on the physical, because that's unfair. Are there some systems that maybe need to look more at that side? Are there some systems where their marking system could be adjusted to reflect that more? Absolutely. And I do think we're tending that way, and I think that will be the push to get pageants to look more at that kind of stuff. So why isn't it looked at more? Well, I think we're pushing that way, and then it really comes down, Emma, I think, to the individual systems, which really, let's face it, comes down to the international directors as well. And as I said at the beginning, I don't really mind so much that a director or system has an agenda as long as they're transparent about it. And again, if they can't be transparent about it because it's discriminatory, then you shouldn't have that agenda in the first place. And then speaking to the last part, we need to see more curvy beauty queens. I think you can get from the way I'm going and from the lives that I've been doing, I like to encourage you to see it from both sides. So would it be nice to see more body types accepted and promoted? Absolutely. But I kind of like to stay away from statements such as we need more curvy beauty queens, because that's an agenda. That's similar to me saying we need more brunette beauty queens or we need more non-Caucasian beauty queens. To me, this is kind of my opinion. I want the best woman for the job to get the job. Outside of that, I kind of think everything else is a different level of argument. For me, as long as a woman who most deserves the job and is best suited for that job gets that job, then I don't mind so much whether they're curvy, whether they're skinny, brunette, blonde, Asian, Caucasian, indigenous. To me, that's secondary. All I ask is that the person who best deserves that job gets that job. Now, is that always the case? Obviously not. And some of the things we've discussed do come into it. So if you are in the unfortunate position where you've been in a pageant and you feel like you've been discriminated against because of, let's say, your waist size is not small enough, then that is really unfair. And I would say that obviously you don't want to ever go into that pageant again. But just to blanket say that we need more curvy beauty queens, like absolutely, I think in essence it's a great idea. But if we have more curvy beauty queens, then remember we're taking it away from someone else. So it's just kind of a dangerous precedent to set, because I think everyone's going to want something different, and I don't want to just press one side without looking at the other side as well. So I think for mine, again, there's a lot of thought, if you can't tell. From my point of view, the main thing is that the best woman for the job gets that job. And how have we got here? Effie Murphy has said, as a current Mrs. International Curve, I have to say there are many curvy pageants over here on this side of the pond, UK and Ireland. I also have small tattoos, which, I did feel aware of in my outfits. However, it didn't matter on the day as I took the crown. I do feel curvy pageants are wonderful, and I also feel mainstream pageants are opening up to all types of pageant girls. I believe you enter a system that applies to you personally. So look around and see what suits you. Best wishes, Effie, Mrs. International Curve 2018-2019. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you there. So I know, for example, one of the people who's been following me, I think she's the director of Miss Voluptuous UK. And obviously, Effie, here you are a representative of a similar sort of system. And I'm assuming, just from the name. And as I said, I know pageant girls, pageant queens here who have titles who are being sent overseas to represent Australia, who don't just have small tattoos, they're full-arm tattoos, and they're going over there without covering it up. So certainly they got their titles here and they were having photo shoots done here without covering up those tattoos. So, I mean, I get, just to wrap this up, I understand absolutely when women who aren't necessarily a size 0 feel upset because they feel that they've been excluded because of their body type. I absolutely understand that it should not happen. But there is a great danger in making the leap that you didn't win a pageant because of. And this is where I really, and I'll discuss this as I said in a next live, about transparency. So as long as a scoring system and the agenda, if there is one, is transparent, I think that will flush out a lot of the problems that, at least here in Australia, we seem to be having. I don't know, the UK or the US. In Ireland specifically, it's different, but I really think we need more transparency here. Outside of that, I'm very hesitant to push an agenda, because my agenda, if you want to put it that way, is very simple. As I said, best woman for the job gets the job. And as long as that's happening, if it happens to be 80% of the people who get the job are curvy, great. If it's 80% are skinny, great. As long as it's best person for the job gets the job. And then it's up to directors to enforce the rules in the system that make that happen. So look, that's my thoughts. I could have just said, yes, I agree with it. That would be the easy, politically correct thing to say. And I do in essence agree with some aspects of it, but I really, really want to. And this applies to especially the pageant industry here in Australia. I can't speak to international pageant communities, but we really need to be in a position where we can force ourselves, train ourselves, please, to see both sides of any argument. Force yourself to go, okay, I know that I want more curvy people in there, and maybe that's because I'm the curvy type and I was rejected from maybe I got bullied in school for it. So yes, I do want more curvy people, but I could understand that, maybe the curvy person wasn't the best person for the job. I want you to start thinking like that so we have more educated and more even heated discussion, but we can respect where the other person is coming from. Because at the moment, I'm kind of ashamed to say, there's a lot of just kind of name calling and oversimplifying. It's like you against me. You're either with me or you're against me. You're either right or you're wrong. And at the end of the day, I don't think very often you can state right or wrong. Very often it's simply agendas. Very often, almost all the time, you can argue for both sides. So please, with any discussion about anything in life, but especially in pageantry, train yourself to see the other side. Remember, the other side, there's a human being, and they have reasons for feeling the way they feel. And if you'd had their upbringing, you'd probably be acting exactly the same way they are. So go for it, argue your cause, argue for it passionately. just remember that there is another side, and just train yourself to see the other side, because I think that way we can have a more educated discussion and we can bring the community together rather than splitting it apart. I will leave it here. If you have any issues that you want me to table, discuss, leave them in the comments below. If it needs to be confidential, send me a message and make sure you tell me that you want to remain confidential. But as we go deeper into these lives, it's obvious that for a lot of you, bringing up some of these maybe discussions that you can't because you're a title holder, it's really important to you guys. So let me know. I want to use this platform for this. I will leave it there, and I'll speak to you again very soon.